we finally got to work on another CJ, and I gotta be careful, got a bad leg, but this is John's CJ-7, and we just got done with a round of work on this thing, and it's a really nice classic CJ with, some upgrades like an LS engine. On this round, we replaced the rear end. It had Wagoneer 44s in it, front and rear. Actually, I think it might have been a Scout 44 and then a Wagoneer front axle with F-155 lug outers on it. But anyway, regardless, the 44 rear end was not holding up to 37-inch tires, LS power. Really what was happening is it was bending the tubes. He had an old school Warren full floater kit on it, and John called us up and said, hey, let's replace the rear end. So that's where we started. So if you take a look underneath here, you can see that we went ahead and built a Dana 60 for it. So this is a, I believe it's 61-inch wide. Started from a Ford Dana 60 rear housing, 35 spline outer axle shafts. We went with 11-inch drum brakes on this thing, just Ford Racing, all brand new drum brakes. Hooked the e-brake back up. Has our spring plates, our U-bolts, has our torque arm welded on there. In something kind of different on this thing, this has 488 gears, and we decided to go with the True Track. So this has a 35 spline True Track in the rear, which is going to make it drive killer on the highway and still work good on the trail. All right, so here's the deal with going with the True Track. So John had Detroit's front and rear, and this thing was always a handful to drive. Even with the automatic and the LS, that Detroit popping in and out. So we convinced him to go with the True Track in the rear, keep the Detroit in the front. We found that the combo of the helical geared limited slip in the rear and the full locker in the front really works good on the trail, doesn't ever bind up, actually turns really sharp on hard ground. So we'll see what he says after a year or so, but True Track in the rear. While we were at it, we went with some new wheels and tires. So these are Raceline 17-inch 5 on 5.5, and they have 3 3/4 back spacing, so they stick out a little bit. And this is actually 9-inch rim with a bead lock, so it comes out to be 10 inches wide. And then of course the 37-inch KM3s, brand new on this bad boy. So John already had all the corner armor, flares put on here, rear swinging tire rack, old school rear bumper, nice roll cage. Pretty classic built CJ. About 10 years this build's been on the road. Take a look inside, you can see it just has a stainless steel dash with factory CJ gauges, with the exception that center speedometer is the Speed Hut speedometer. Check that out, CB radio right there underneath the dash mounted. And got the low car shifter for the 4L60E, and then over there the twin sticks for the Dana 300 transfer case. Of course, got a Dana 300 with 4-to-1 gears in it. All we did on the inside of this thing is on his roll cage, added our bikini top on here. And this bikini top does not go all the way to the front window. So when the hard top goes on, you just leave the bikini top on there. Good to go. Keeps the sun off of you. Hopefully no flapping in the wind. You see the Velcro on all the crossbars. So we'll see how that works out. In the front, we didn't really do anything. This has a Wagoneer 44 front end. Now, one of the things you'll notice right away is that the springs are actually outboarded. They're not lined up with the frame. You come to the back here and look at the shackle, and there's an offset shackle going through the frame so that you could keep the springs low and use that Wagoneer axle. So this is the downfall of using the Wagoneer front end, is it's a 61-inch wide front end, but the leaf spring width is 32 inches center to center, whereas CJ is 27.5, so they have to be outboarded. It's really more of a pain in the ass to outboard the springs than to take another axle and narrow it. But that's just how this Jeep came when he bought it. So Wagoneer front end, Detroit, high steer, spring over, pretty simple build. He's got the, of course, Warren 8274. Can't do it any better on a CJ. With the rope, got the ring here on the front bumper, the hoop, to protect the radiator in the case of a rollover. Also, flat fenders in the front, which this is a home built kit, it looks like, and then vents in the hood to keep that LS from getting too hot. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the bread and butter underneath here, even though we didn't do it. Everybody likes to see an LS engine. So this is a Novak 5.3 kit for a CJ. Has the radiator kit in it with electric fan. And it does seem to keep it really cool. 4L60E, we'll get underneath there and show the exhaust, but we did our same 2-into-1 exhaust. What we did do underneath the hood, I forgot, is take a look at that brake booster there. So we went ahead with Hydro Boost brakes. With the vacuum brakes, it just wasn't working right when it came in, and with the automatic and the 4-to-1. So we went ahead and added Hydro Boost for John on this round, and the brakes seem to work killer right now. So while we're looking up front here, kneel down here, and you can see right up there underneath the oil pan the exhaust that we just did. So it comes around from the passenger side to the driver's side, 2-into-1. So it's dual 2-inch into single 3-inch all the way to the back through a Flowmaster. He already had a Flowmaster. At the same time, while you're underneath there, you can see the belly pan that Andrew just built. So while we were at it, we redid his rear torque arm when we put the rear end in and put a new belly pan in there. So maybe come around to this side, we could see it a little bit better. We're in the shade here. So if you take a look underneath there, you can see the torque arm on the rear axle with the torque arm brackets coming right up next to the driveline. Shackle hanger off of the new cross member that we built. And then you can see the cross member Andrew built there, 1.5 by 2 with kind of a loop coming up front to protect the transmission oil pan. And while you're right there, you can see the biggest detriment to going 4L60 and passenger drop Dana 44. And what we're going to look at is this. So take a look at that front drive line, and right up in here, it is so close to the transmission pan right up there that all you can use is a 1.25-inch drive shaft and a 1310 U-joint. There's no way you could put a CV on there. There's no way you could do a 1350 on there. And you can even see here, see this weld all the way along the side. So Novak takes this factory transmission pan and welds it and cuts it, makes a giant notch there to clear the drive line. To me, that is a lot of work to get that accomplished. And even down here, looking at the pinion and the U-joint there, it's still really tight to the oil pan exhaust as well. So the only benefit of this one is being the Wagoneer axle, the front diff is a little bit out towards the passenger tire a little more. So that does help you get clearance for the driveline a little bit more running passenger drop with a 4L60. All of our builds that we start from scratch, we like to do driver's drop with a 4L60 so that you have plenty of room for the drive shaft and you don't run into the transmission, which unfortunately means a whole new front end built from scratch and planning from the very beginning. When you're already down that road of having a passenger drop front axle, it's kind of a pain in the ass. One thing I didn't mention is these are custom Alcan springs, and the springs work really good. You can see they got some military wrap in them. They're a really thick leaf spring pack in there, super soft, made by Alcan. But we found that the Jeep was just a little bit too tall. So in the back here, we removed the fuel tank. We sleeved the frame like a YJ, welded our bushings into the frame, and used a 4-inch shackle to get the Jeep as low as possible. And I forgot to mention that with these shackles for the front springs going through the frame, when it came in, it had some outboard hangers, and the shackles just hung off the side of the frame and hung down really far. And that was also making the front taller. So by us building those offset shackles and going through the frame, we were able to lower the front and the rear of the Jeep, which was very unique, worked out well. One other thing that we found on this build while we were working on it that a lot of people overlook, when you put a LS package in with a 4L60 automatic or a 4L80, you got to make sure that you hook up the torque converter lock. So that's a wire that goes to your brake pedal, but it does not power on when you hit your brakes. It actually powers off when you hit your brakes. So lucky for us, Novak builds a relay into the system to kind of switch it, where you can still use the power wire from your brake lights and it runs a relay and switches it opposite. And what that does is that allows the torque converter to lock up. Otherwise, you're going to overheat your transmission. It will always be slipping going down the highway or the freeway. So very important to make sure that your torque converter lockup wire is hooked up properly on these LS swaps in the CJs. So this thing is one finger down the highway, 80 miles an hour. Flex is unbelievable with these leaf springs. And the fact that he even used the factory sway bar still, and it's hooked down to the axle. So with the sway bar and the spring over and everything else, this Jeep really came out nice and has been built for a long time. But I think with the Hydro Boost brakes, the new big rear end, the True Track, and kind of lowering it down a little bit, doing that new cross member, it's just that extra little, lipstick that's going to make it that much better and that much more comfortable to drive. So all you CJ guys, there's a lot to look at and see on this thing, but what a rad ride.